doing? Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Please take your seats. We're going to get started. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I call this special meeting of the New Orleans City Council to order.
Councilmember,
Thank you. No
I
problem.
have to read your letter and then we do the roll call.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have a letter dated September 6, 2023. Laura W. Johnson, Clerk of City Council, 1300 Perdido Street. Dear Madam Clerk, pursuant to my authority in section 3-1075 of the Home Rule Charter of the City of New Orleans, there will be a special city council meeting on September 12th, 2023 at 11 a.m. or immediately following the adjournment of the 10 a.m. Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, whichever comes first. The meeting will be dedicated to the investigation regarding the written communication by the mayor's office entitled City of New Orleans 2022 Recap, and any other matters that may properly come before the council, including the consideration of charges under section 3-125 arising from the investigation. Please make the necessary arrangements to have this special meeting cable cast live on the government access television channel and tape for recasting in the future. Sincerely, J.P. Morrell, New Orleans City Council President. Roll call, Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Green.
Present.
Councilmember King.
Yeah.
Councilmember Morrell.
Yes.
Councilmember Moreno. Present. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Jeruso. We have 6 members. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. There appears to be an issue with the agenda. Real briefly, there is no presentation regarding the City of New Orleans 2022 recap. That's included in the voluminous documents that are produced as far as the motion, but that is in reference to the actual mailer itself. So the mailer itself is already seen a wide public dissemination. It's included in the list of charges. So we do have one person who wants to comment on the mailer, though I do think you might want to comment on the second item. Mr. Peterson, do you want to do the second item? Okay, we'll change this to the second item then. All right, so Madam Clerk, we'll pass over number 1 and go to motion number 2.
Motion M23-424 by Councilmember Morrell. A motion charging Communications Director Gregory Joseph, a member of the Unclassified Service of the City of New Orleans, with incompetence, neglect of duty, and gross misconduct in reference to his duties and providing otherwise with respect to the removal provisions of section 3-125 of the Home Rule Charter, and there is an amendment by Councilmember Moreno. On page 2, in the first be it further moved paragraph, delete September 28, 2023, and insert in lieu thereof October 3rd, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll take up the amendment briefly. There were scheduling conflicts on the 28th. Therefore, it's been moved to the 3rd.
Additionally, I'd like to add it's actually to our benefit in that the charter provides ample time for Mr. Joseph to do his own discovery in said case. So the additional time will actually be a benefit to the process itself. I'll move on the Council Vice President's amendment.
And I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment is added. On the underlying item as amended, Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you in the public, the council obviously has been well apprised of this investigation going forward. It began with several months ago, near the beginning of the year, some questions regarding a apparently, obviously political minded mailer paid for public funds. The council, led by my office with the Governmental Affairs Committee, did a very thorough investigation, subpoenaing and going through thousands of documents. We then additionally had testimony from two members of the administration, in particular, the accused, Mr. Joseph, as well as the head of procurement, Mr. Julian Meyer. And those statements, that testimony combined with those thousands of documents led to the conclusion that there were several issues with Mr. Joseph not being truthful and potentially violating state law. As you see, I'll go through, generally speaking, the items in the exhibits. The first exhibit is the statement of facts and legal authority and formal charges. This outlines the process in the charter as to how we're moving forward. The statement of facts and legal authority. The first issue is statutory prohibitions against publicly funded electioneering. This talks about the issue with having public funds used to promote political agendas. This provides all the documentation as well as all the references to law. The second is the accused in this situation, Mr. Director of Communications, Mr. Gregory Joseph. And further, it then goes into the background of the mayoral recall, the engagement of Mercury Public Affairs that was detailed both in documentations and the hearing itself, as well as the purpose and the rationale behind hiring Mercury Public Affairs. Then the charges go into describing the mailer as well as the substantial information we obtained in regards to it, as well as the underlying problems with the mailer. As far as if you look at the way the mailer is structured, who it was sent to, and the like, they all indicate that the mailer was intended to be political in nature. That being said, item 5 talks about the impermissible purpose of the mailer campaign, basically detailing the fact that the mailer was in fact political in nature. Public funds were used to fund said mailer, and that is prohibited by law. Inside of all of that, it cites documentation as well as the transcript of the hearing, the formal charges, of which there are 2. The first is Gregory Joseph did intentionally institute, participate in, and oversee a publicly funded advertising campaign intended to garner public support for Mayor Cantrell and to sway the outcome of the recall effort in direct violation of state law. His actions in that regard constitute incompetence, neglect of duty, and gross misconduct. Charge 2, Gregory Joseph did intentionally provide false testimony under oath before the Governmental Affairs Committee on August 31st, 2023, regarding the role of the recall campaign in connection with the City of New Orleans 2022 mailer campaign. In the face of a clear legal duty to tell the truth and to cooperate with a lawful investigation of the City Council, Mr. Joseph's misrepresentations constitute incompetence, neglect of duty, and gross misconduct. After that, there is the opinion that deals with the general opinion that deals with most recent opinion from the Attorney General's office dealing with the impermissibility of publicly funded political mailers, as well as a host of other information that provides exhibits to support said charges. I am happy, since we do not have Granicus up, if any council members have comments or statements, please cite them at this time.
Mr. President, I don't have a statement or a comment. It's just a procedural question that I'd like to pose to our executive council. Mr. Swensick, an affirmative vote on motion 23-424 means what, and what are the next steps following?
So we're following the procedure that's set forth in section 3125 of the charter. So what will happen next? These charges have to be presented in writing to Mr. Joseph's appointing authority, that is the mayor. So once the council, if the council elects to vote on this, a copy of this motion will be transmitted to Mr. Joseph and to the mayor. The mayor then has the decision as to whether to release Mr. Joseph from his service. If she does not do so by the date prescribed in the motion, then we will have a hearing pursuant to the charter. Mr. Joseph has the authority to bring evidence to be represented by counsel at that hearing. So that is the October 3rd date. If the mayor elects not to terminate Mr. Joseph the October 3rd date, the council will need to conduct a hearing. And at that point, the decision, the council, whether to let him go will occur.
Thank you, Mr. Swansea. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make, and I recognize that we as a body have the authority under the Home Rule Charter to bring forth these suggestions and these, if you will, these charges. I have concerns relative to the fact that I think that we cannot take lightly what we're being asked to vote on here, and that's being asked to vote on something which could result in someone losing his form of employment based on a decision that we make that it was done in conjunction with the recall. I don't think that anyone up here will be telling the truth if we didn't say we're disappointed by the timing. I'm disappointed also by the fact that the contracting process seems to have been circumvented relative to the determination of breaking up contracts into two. But in this regard, I wish that we had more time as a body to consider such charges as incompetent, neglect of duty, and gross misconduct. I know that those are legal terms, but I'm not sure that I can vote, for example, on incompetence. Which is a term that is subjective and involves a lot of analysis. Certainly neglect of duty is a little bit more legal. Gross misconduct, it could be misconduct, but I recognize that that's a legal action. So in general, I don't agree with the removal proceedings that are being brought. I felt that there could be a little bit more consulting and that there might be alternatives to this measure. And at the end of the day, there's so much attention that's being brought to this particular matter. The communications director, I'm so focused on my district solving problems and resolving issues. We had a big announcement on yesterday. I wish that I could see more focus in those particular areas. So as I vote against it today, it's not with me making any decision relative to whether or not Mr. Joseph has engaged in activities that are disappointing, because they may be. But I think that there are other alternatives involving other agencies and other mechanisms of getting to the bottom of whether or not this was in fact, because I don't have that testimony. I have conflicting testimony as to whether or not this was based on the recall itself. But the bottom line is that those are the comments that I make in with regards to this. I appreciate the time that you and your office have spent relative to this matter, and I look forward to the vote.
Thank you.
Council member,
Yes, good.
I'd like to make a comment, in response to Councilmember Green's comment, and I understand his perspective, but everyone who witnessed the testimony of Mr. Joseph, everyone who has read the documents and the conflicting testimony by Mr. Meyer understands that Mr. Joseph clearly lied to us while under oath. And while I can see having been mistaken about maybe separating contracts and there may be some wiggle room, sitting up before a legislative body while under oath and lying to us is something in my mind that is unforgivable. And so while I understand Mr. Green's perspective and I understand the administration's perspective, I don't think that the city of New Orleans can afford to employ someone who is dishonest, not only with the city council, but dishonest with the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, you'd like to make a comment? Mr. Green, you have 2 minutes. Sorry, Mr. Peterson. Sorry, Mr. Peterson, you have 2 minutes.
Ricky Peterson, 4555 Dote Avenue, and I'm not a paid speaker. I want to say this, as a former state employee who was terminated from my job and appealed that termination through state civil service and through mediation process without an attorney representing myself, I was at least able to get them to compensate me. I had to resign to avoid termination, but I was at least successful and to recoup in some type of monetary value for what I believe was the wrongful termination for my own political beliefs. With that being said, I'd like to bring to your hearing that you said that you presented all this factual evidence. And from what I saw, when I watched the hearing, I didn't see any factual evidence being presented. I saw and heard a lot of circumstantial evidence being presented. I heard emails being read that can be broken down and interpreted to mean anything without knowing the full context of what was said prior to whatever you read for the public to hear. I don't know that. What I know is, based on what I watched, to my knowledge, you had like 9,000 pages of documents, and of 9,000 pages of documents, not one of those documents was able to tell you, or as a governing body, that what Mr. Joseph did was a violation of law and unprofessional and unethical. None of that proved that it was in connection with a recall. Days of when the contract was signed, none of that proved anything. And you have one, Mr. Meyer, he said he was told that it was in the context of the recall, but when pressed further by you, Leslie Harris,
Mr. Peterson, your time is up.
by you, Councilmember Harris, by you, he was unable to say who told him those things. And to me,
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, your time is up.
I'm narrowing it down. So I'm asking you, whatever action you all take, just, I hope you are prepared, because I was Mr. Jones, I already consulted my lawyer about suing the city if you guys actually move forward with that, because you don't have a leg to stand on, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Morgan.
Peterson, not Peterson.
I said Mr. Peterson. I said Peterson. Mr. Morgan? Okay.
Good morning to the people in the house. At this meeting, I was supposed to go on a trip of fishing today, but the people request that I come here and put their point across. They request and ask that Mr. Joseph Gregory will be fired because the people trust what's in him and he deceived the people. And what batters the people is how many other situations that he has got away with it that has not been brought to the light. He took an oath of loyalty to the people and he deceived the people. The people demand that you fire him.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That concludes our comments. Any public comment, online comment? All right. I'll provide a brief closing observation before our vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you honestly, from my perspective, as the person who's the author of this motion, the council is not excited to do this. This is not something that we thought we'd ever have to do when all of us took the oath of office 2 years ago. It's not something, even to date, a lot of us are terribly comfortable with. The reality is that when something is brought to our attention that involves a misuse of public dollars, it is our obligation as a city council, as those individuals charged with maintaining the budget and finances, to investigate it. Through the course of a almost 6 month investigation, a thorough investigation with tremendous amount of document production, it became evident there was a problem. At the hearing, which was really an attempt to allow the parties that were most identified in those emails and documents the opportunity to provide context to the overwhelming evidence that a problem occurred, a lot of the testimony provided, particularly by Mr. Joseph, almost exclusively of Mr. Joseph, did not only not provide context, it was an active effort to hide information or provide contradictory information to what he had already presented in another format. To have $50,000 does not seem like a lot of money, not to a city that budgets tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but it's indicative of a larger problem, which is that if we do not hold people to account for how funds are spent, if we do not hold people to account when they're providing testimony that it be truthful, then the public gets to the point where they wonder what's the point. They wonder and question, is the council doing its job? And as their tax dollars, and we all know as council members, everyone is struggling under the weight of taxation in the city of New Orleans. If we do not take seriously when problems like this occur, it undermines confidence, not just in the council's role in government, but government as a whole. I appreciate Mr. Green, the terminology is very inflammatory, but that is the legal terminology, which is why the charges are shaped that way. So with all that being said, I will move that we approve the motion as amended to forward to Mr. Joseph and to the administration. Can I get a second? Seconded by Vice President Moreno. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, aye. All opposed, say nay. By a vote of 4-2, the motion is approved and it shall be forwarded to Mr. Joseph and to the administration, the mayor of the city of New Orleans.
Councilmember, you said 4-2,
4-2.
so who's?
Before the two
I was-
are Mr. King and Mr. Green.
All right.
That being said, the next item on our agenda is executive session. I will move to go, oh, sorry, you have to read the item first. I apologize.
Executive session. The executive session to discuss the following litigation, United States of America versus City of New Orleans, Civil Action Number 12-CB-01924, Section I, Division 2, United States District Court for the Eastern District of Louisiana, Judge Susie Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll move that we go into executive session, seconded by Council Vice President Moreno. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. We are entering executive session. Thank you.
Roll call. Councilmember Green,
Here.
Councilmember Morrell,
Here.
Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Jeruso. Councilmember King, we have 5 members. We have a quorum.
Council Vice President, Behind moves to adjourn. Councilmember Jeruso seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Bye-bye.